All right, in this video, we're going to take a little bit more look at how you can organize your code in Python, and it'll help you understand how Odoo organizes code. When you see things broken out, you won't be so intimidated by it, because one of the important things about writing good code is that you don't end up with one method or one functions with hundreds of lines in them. You want to take and reuse as much code as possible and package up code into small methods. It's if you start getting methods that are hundreds of lines long, then usually they're going to be difficult to debug and they're going to be very complex. So we're going to just use our little simple example here to show how we can start to make a little change to see how to make a method and a function in Python. So one of the things that we can do is just come down here into our program, and notice how we keep looping through this like for key in car, and we might say we wanted to reuse this to print out anything that we might want to send to print out a list from our dictionary. So something to print out a list of dictionaries. So what I can do is I can create a method call, and we do this by calling def for define. That's how I think of it, define a method. And we're going to say print dictionary. And we have to take some kind of parameter to tell us which one we want to pick. And so we'll just call this the dictionary that we want to get. Now, the rest of this code, instead of it being key in the car, we're going to say key in the dictionary. And then down here, you can say the dictionary. And what this means is we can come up here and say, and I think we'll say down here, print dictionary, and send along the car. And so what'll happen is we have this car structure right here, and we're going to be calling print dictionary, which we've set up this method called print dictionary, and we're going to pass along the car to it, and it's going to come in here. And once it comes in here, it's going to then loop, and we didn't get our indentation right here, through and print out our dictionary, in this case our car. So let's see if that works. And sure enough, we get it. Now, what's the beauty of this? Well, it's just an example, but already we can see how, if I come down here, I could say print dictionary book. And one thing I have to change when I do this is I'll have to make this year a string. And why do I have to make that a string? Because I'm adding them together right here for our print statement. So it's just because of our example that I need to make that a string. But now watch what happens when I go over and I run this. I have first one and then the other. So it first did the car, then it did the book. So if we had we could, if we wanted to, come down here, say software equals, and I can make a bracket, say title, and it's Odoo, and type could be business. Just like that. If we print dictionary software, notice how once it got done doing the car and doing the book, then it did the software. And we're reusing this print dictionary that we created over and over and over again. Just keeps getting recreated. So why is that important? It's important because when we look through the Odoo applications and the framework and you start working with it, you're going to need to be able to package up your code into methods and call them and get comfortable with passing parameters like we did here, where we pass this car onto our method, or we pass this book here onto our method. So that wraps up our Python primer. In this section, we covered, how to do simple prints, where we just printed out regular hello world out. So very simple. Then we went into seeing how we can import our own external modules or external libraries and then access them. In this case, we generated a random number between 1 and 100. We learned how to use some of the methods in Python to convert strings or numbers into strings so that they can be added to strings and printed out. Then we learned about collections. Sometimes they're called arrays in other languages, but we learned that we can create these collections that are basically accessible by their numerical position or by looping through them. We learned how we can use some of these commands like this to append to lists, and we then took the time to go onto Google and look at some of the other things that you could do with lists. So there's a lot out there to study. We looked at then how we could do loops. We understood the if statements and conditional statements. And then finally, we started looking at the dictionaries, how we could loop through them. And then, of course, finally in this video, we learned how to create our own custom methods that we could then call repeatedly over and over again. So that pretty much covers our Python primer. It's certainly just an introduction. We still, through our Odoo portions of this, as we start developing more Odoo applications, we're still going to consider you a relatively new Python programmer. You don't need to even go through this Python primer in order to understand the basics of Odoo development, but I think by taking the time to understand these basics and how these basic elementary Python commands work, and practice a little bit, play around with it, make your own simple little if statements and loops, and get comfortable working with the language a little bit. So that'll make it less intimidating as you start building up in applications in Odoo and modifying the Odoo framework to do what you need for your business. So with that, I'm wrapping it up, and we'll see you in the next section when we set up a better development environment for Odoo and start really taking a look at the framework under the hood and doing more complex Odoo applications.